Buenas tardes, Nogalenses, and to the rest of the world that's watching right now. Welcome to our town. Mayor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Arturo Garino, and I'm the mayor of the city of Nogales.
All right. So, obviously, the city of Nogales has been thrust into this middle of this national crisis, and it's front and center. I mean, we've got the razor wire, the vote that you and city council made, and even the shooting last night. I mean, the fentanyl bust that happened a week or so ago.
Yes.
We're front and center, right in the middle of everything. I mean, how does that feel?
Well, in a way, I wish that we were front and center, showing everybody in the United States how important this port is economically, which, they should know that. But to be front and center for a reason that we really didn't do ourselves, that it was brought upon us, I don't think it's what I really want. But we have to put it front and center. That's the only way we're going to get the message out, and that's the only way we're going to let people outside of Nogales know exactly how the business leaders in Nogales, the residents of Nogales, and this whole area in Santa Cruz County feel in reference to the razor wire.
Well, last night on my show, I had Tony Estrada on, and he mentioned, like you said, the economic value of the Santa Cruz, of Nogales Port of Entry. And he touched on a few things, but did you want to go into a little bit more detail? Produce, maquilas?
Well, yes. Nogales Port of Entry, just for the people that don't know, is the number one port in the state of Arizona, the most important in the state of Arizona, and actually the West Coast. And a lot of our produce even goes to the East Coast, a lot of it. The maquiladora industry in Nogales, Sonora, there's over 110 companies, factories across the line, and with over 43,000 people working on them. And they manufacture goods that go to the United States that are shipped from the United States. We have the rail system that goes through here that brings all the cars from the motor companies from Hermosillo that are sold in the United States also. This all happens in our port, and it's all the legal way, through the DeConcini Port of Entry, to the Mariposa Port of Entry, and the Morley Avenue Port of Entry. We have to concentrate on how trade and what the importance is of things coming across the legal way.
Now, you mentioned the maquilas and the produce, and you said that there's in Mexico, but does it employ people on this side too, within the city of Nogales, within Santa Cruz County?
Yes, of course. Matter of fact, a lot of the people that work on the maquilas are residents of Nogales, Arizona.
Okay, all right then. So let's talk about you a little bit. You're a veteran.
Yes, I am. When I graduated from high school in 1971, I volunteered, and the war was on. Vietnam War was on. I volunteered to the Navy, and I did 3 tours to Vietnam.
Okay. And you've also served as a policeman. You've done some service.
Yes, when I came back from the service, I actually was certified as a firefighter for the state of Arizona, and became a firefighter for the city of Nogales. And then later on, I transferred to the police department. I graduated from the police academy. And then with time went on, I went to the sheriff's department, and I was also a deputy sheriff. But I have another honorable discharge, which later on I joined the Army National Guard. So I actually have 2 honorable discharges. Okay,
now let's get into what everybody is really wanting to hear, and that's about the wire and the vote. When did the wire first get installed?
Well, actually, the first wire was installed in November before I took office. And it was 1 strand at the very top of the wall that we have, because we've had a wall for over 20 years. Okay? So about a week and a half ago or so, they started installing some wire. But then on the weekend, all of a sudden, the wire was installed in the majority of the area downtown. It was installed to the ground, from the top to the ground. At that time, we in the city were concerned, because it's close to backyards of certain residencies right by the border, within about 20, 30 feet, or maybe even less, from the wall where the razor wire is at, and there's children there, there's people, there are animals there, and it very easily can be accessed by anybody walking through there. And these are U.S. citizens. That's my concern right there.
Anybody watching right now, perhaps you've actually seen the photos. They're all over the news. I mean, they were even on Fox News, CNN, the Huffington Post, of where this wire is, the wall that we have here in Nogales, and its proximity to the actual city. One of the other concerns referring to the wire is how it'll affect downtown, which is an area that's been trying to be revitalized for quite some time.
Yes, it's going to affect. Matter of fact, I've already got sat down and talked to some of the merchants downtown. They're concerned right now is the people coming across in the area where the majority of this wire is at is the Morley Port of Entry, and that's a pedestrian walkway. Only pedestrians go through there, that port, and that's in the first 2-3 blocks of the downtown area. Where there's a lot of merchants, a lot of clothing stores and stuff like that. And the people from Nogales, Sonora come across to shop, and they go through there. There's been concerns, and you can hear it in radio stations across the line, in newspapers, and just by people walking around, that what is happening to Nogales, Arizona. Because they come across, then they see this wire as they're walking back, and it seems, and it's very menacing. It's something that, so eventually it might not happen right now that we can get a comparison report and say, okay, we've lost so much revenue because of the wire, but you give it some time. Give it some time, and it will affect us, because even the Fresh Produce Association and the Port Authority have taken concern. I've talked to them, and they're very concerned with this because they trade with the majority of the produce fields that they have in Mexico, and the greenhouses where they grow the majority of their produce that comes to the United States that is sold nationwide, not just in Arizona. So they are also concerned because some of their buyers, some of their growers in Mexico, are also asking about this. What is happening to Arizona, and what is happening to Nogales? So this is of course it's going to take a lot of different avenues, but we as a city and the group of us here, not only in the city council, but the councils of government in this area, we're going to have to look at this very seriously, and we have to do something about it.
Okay, so somebody just commented, and I'm wondering if you'd like to respond to it, who's claiming that Nogales has been a ghost town since a long time ago.
Well, actually, not Nogales, the downtown area. The rest of the city is fine. What was happening is that the wait times at the border have been increasing recently within the past 2.5 years, and it's taken toll on the downtown area because it takes about 3 hours to come across by even walking, and sometimes it could take 4 hours driving across. So that of course causes problems to people that want to do that, because if they're going to be waiting in line for 3 hours, they might as well go back home and do their shopping in Nogales, Sonora. And wait for another time when the lines are lower. So that's caused that. And there's also been a peso devaluation. So that those things cause this. But what the wire can cause is detrimental. It's something that it's the visual of it. You have to be in Nogales. You have to look at it to really understand what we're talking about. You can see it on television. You can talk about it in Washington. You can talk about it in California and in Montana and different places watching on television. But come up and see it. You'll see how you would like that in your backyard, to see if you would really get what you need from it. Because that wall's been there, like I said, for 20 some years. The stats on jumpers on that wall is minimal. And the majority of the drug loads have been coming through the port. So what does the wall and the razor wire have to do with this whole issue? Well,
let's walk through a timeline real quick. Okay, so it was in November that the National Guard was first deployed. When Trump deployed all those troops to the border in anticipation of these caravans that were coming.
Yes.
And then they started putting up this concertina wire.
One strand.
At the very top. Was the city? I know you weren't mayor at that time, but as far as you know, was the city notified?
No.
And in any way, shape, or form?
None.
So troops just showed up and they started stringing razor wire on the top of the wall.
Let me give you a little bit of history. In my first term back in 2013, they had a plan of putting concertina wire in a section. But at that time, there was a different Border Patrol chief here and different personnel, they came to my office with a plan, and they showed it to me, and they said, this is what we plan to do, Mayor. What do you think? They had the courtesy of asking me. And at that time, I consulted the staff, I consulted the police chief, the fire chief, and everybody, and we all decided that it wasn't a very good idea. And they were only talking about putting one strand at the very top. And you know what they did? They didn't put it up, Joe. They said, we're going to respect the city of Nogales. We're going to be good stewards with the city of Nogales like they're supposed to be, and they didn't do it. But this time around, they just went all out, and when I asked the Border Patrol, after they did decide to talk to me, then the first they didn't want to. When I asked and I said, why are you doing this? And he says, it's because we were asked by Washington to fortify the border. And I said, with razor wire? And he says, yeah, that was our idea. That's what we wanted to do.
And
this is what the chief said here.
They didn't just string up razor wire. They also they blocked off lanes of traffic and put more razor wire there. And since then, those blocks have been removed.
Yes.
Right. And then a few weeks ago, there was a large fentanyl bust at the port on a truck full of cucumbers.
Yes.
From my perspective, razor wire doesn't have anything to do with blocking a truck.
The largest fentanyl bust and meth in the history, and it was on the port. And there's 1,600 to 1,800 trucks with produce that come across that have to be inspected every day. And it's hard for them to do the work. I respect the work that they do at the port, the Customs and Border Protection. And I respect the work that Border Patrol does. And I know it's a tough job, but the majority of the loads, and it's been said by Washington, they're coming through the ports.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing that timeline, the troops were redeployed last weekend.
Yes.
And was the city notified?
No.
Okay, and they strung up like another 3 to 4?
They actually about 5 to 6 strands of concertina wire from the very top of an 18-foot fence to the ground, right to the floor level.
I was talking to Deputy City Manager John Kissinger the other day, and he showed me a picture of how far they went, and it goes all the way out to Kino Springs, which
Yes.
for those of you who don't know is east of Nogales, just
Yes.
east of Nogales, where the wall actually ends.
Yeah, it's just a little past city limits.
Okay. Now the wall ends there.
Yeah, there's no wall.
And but they've strung the wire all up to there.
Yes.
So somebody were to come from Mexico is coming across, and
They just walk over there and go around the wall and come into the U.S.
does it feel like the razor wire is effective in that situation?
It's not. And then if you go to the west side of Nogales, it's even shorter because the terrain is so bad. And it's hilly. There's a lot of valleys. The topography, has a lot of changes, a lot of ravines, and it's impossible to. If they try to build a wall, it's going to be very hard. Let alone try to do anything else but patrol it. What they need is access roads to these places so that they can access the possibility with technology and surveillance to capture these people and prevent them from coming across. But not put razor wire in downtown Nogales, and then you walk 20 minutes away either side, and you go around the fence, around the wall.
So continuing with that along this timeline, the razor wire stringed up. They didn't notify the city of Nogales, and you contacted Customs and Border Protection.
Yes, I did.
You reached out to them. This was all in your statement. That if anybody wants to hear this statement, the audio of the actual city council meeting, at least the story that you talked about, CBP, is available through Latino Rebels, where they have a complete audio with some photos of you at the city council meeting and some photos of the wire. So do you want to run us through that again, though? I know people can go to Latino Rebels and hear it, but do you want to
Yes,
go into that again?
I had my police chief. We had a meeting on Monday, and I had the police chief in the meeting and the fire chief, and I asked him what concerns they had. Because back then there was a different chief and a different police chief and a different fire chief. And the fire chief said, I'm afraid for my first responders. If we have to respond to this wire, if somebody falls in it, we could have our men injured too. Police chief said the same thing, okay? So I asked the police chief, I said, do me a favor. Contact CBP and contact Border Patrol, the two chiefs, and see if they could meet with us today at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
No, real quick, let's clarify something there, because CBP is Customs and Border Protection, and Border Patrol falls under that.
It falls under it, but it's BP, Border Patrol.
Okay.
The other one's Customs and Border Protection.
Okay.
Even though they're the same,
Okay.
but that's the way we identify them. Some wear blue and the other ones wear green. Yeah.
Now, they used to be two separate agencies.
Yes, they were.
And now they all fall under
No,
Homeland Security.
one
Okay.
thing. So I asked him to talk to them, and he called them, and they both said no. They didn't want to talk to us. So I said, fine. At that moment, I said, okay, now this is going to be different. It's going to be an uphill battle. And then the following morning, the chief told me, you know what, BP called me, and they say they want to talk to you at 9 o'clock. And I said, well, I can't until 1:30. So we'll say, okay, schedule at 1:30. That's when the chief, police chief, the deputy city manager, and the assistant chief went with me. We went to Border Patrol. And we walked into the office, and we talked to the supervisors there, the ones that are in charge. And that's when we started discussing the wire. And that's when they told me that they needed to fortify. And they started telling me that there's child molesters, there's rapists, murderers jumping over the fence. Okay, so we would know if that was the case, We would know, so that's all right. We let it go. And
I want to mention one more thing about that same exact subject. Last night on my show In Línea, I had Sheriff Tony Estrada, and I asked him that same thing about the rapists and murderers. And as the sheriff, the one who deals with the homicides in these sorts of cases, he couldn't pinpoint any specific situations where that has happened, especially a jumper coming over.
Yes. So and that's when I asked them about the wire, and they told me that why they were doing it, and we discussed about problems, people getting injured. He said, and the excuse they had, we're putting signs that says it's dangerous. Okay. That's how they're gonna. So they did. They put a little railing that says it's dangerous, but it's not stopping any child getting close to it. And so at that time I didn't think we were getting anywhere. So I just got up and I said, thank you very much, and we left. And that's when we started working on everything else.
Now, another thing that I'd like to mention is when they were first stringing up the first strands of the wire, I was actually on the border right there watching them with the documentarian that's been in town doing some documentary work. And we saw them putting up the razor wire, and they didn't have equipment that could go up there. And this was actually, I have nothing but respect for our armed forces. They were great men. I had a chance to have some short conversations with a couple of them. They were very cooperative with me. But the way that they were putting it up is they were just basically hanging ladders off the spikes that they were welding so that they could climb up there and string it. Yes. And a group of them fell right there in front of our eyes. From what it looked like, their superior officer was pretty furious about that, but it was unsafe for them even to go up there.
Yeah, it's even unsafe for them.
And one armed service member that I spoke to, or at least that I'd heard of that mentioned was that even when you're putting it up, they get cut, and it ruins uniforms, and it cuts through skin, and they end up scarred.
Yes, that's why they call it razor wire.
Yeah, and that's for the people who are putting it up.
Yes.
Now, is there a way that the Customs and Border Protection can know that it's a rapist or a murderer on the off chance that there are jumpers jumping over that section of fence?
The only way they'll know is if they take them in and take them to a detention center, and they follow up on it, and with prints and past times that they've crossed, or with Interpol. If there's issues like Mexico stuff, that's the only way. But that's way after that.
So, is there a chance that somebody who is jumping over the wall, if there really is anybody jumping over that wall, is there a chance that it's just some innocent person who wants to come to the United States?
Yeah, and I'm not going to say there hasn't been attempts of them crossing bundles over the. I'm not going to say that there isn't. Okay. That has happened, but it's so far apart. Like I said, they'll go through
easily detected.
They'll go through the ports. They'll go through the terrain and the desert west of here, or the mountains east of here. So there's so many gaps in this fence and this wall that there's no need to come through Nogales or try to jump over the wall.
No, we're actually getting ahead of ourselves, because there's a question that I want to ask you in regards to that in a moment. But let's go back to the timeline. So you were dismissed by the Border Patrol.
Yes.
You walked out of the meeting, from what I understand. And they, you got a saludos al mayor from Pati Epis. Real quick, just wanted to let you, keep up with the comments here. that so you had the city council meeting.
Indeed.
You had the city council meeting, and the vote was unanimous. You told the story,
Yes, it
the same
was.
story that you just told us right now. And John Kissinger, Deputy City Manager John Kissinger, read the proposition,
It was a resolution.
resolution.
Yes.
The resolution, and he described the effects that razor wire can have, or this
Yes.
concertina wire can have on a body
Yes.
that falls through it. Now, back to what I was saying before is if it is just an innocent person, like I don't want to say innocent because they are breaking the law if they're jumping over the fence. Somebody who's not a rapist, not a murderer, somebody who's just trying to get into the United States, not running away from the law or anything like that, falls through that concertina wire, is that a death sentence? Is that almost...
Well, let me tell you something. If you were to fall, if you're coming across, from Mexico, and it's 16 to 18 feet high, in certain places different, and the first strand you're going to hit is about at the 2-foot mark from the top on this side,
Okay.
and then you got to go through that and 6 more strands to the ground. It's not going to be anything else but very, very deadly, or the visuals of it is going to be unbelievable.
Well, as John
Because
Kissinger was
it's-
reading
yes.
this description, there were gasps in the
Yeah.
audience. I mean, if you go to the YouTube, the Nogales City of
Yes.
Nogales' YouTube page, I believe those
It's
gasps
too high.
they're
It's too
audible.
high, Joe,
Yeah.
from the top, and if the more you move, see, it's meant to coil. It's meant to tension itself. So the more you move, the more you get cut. But I don't think you'll make it to the ground. You won't be able to get out of it.
Does that pose a danger to the first responders that
Of
have to
course.
respond to
Of
get
course,
those people
when
out
our
of there?
firemen get there, some of the areas, you've seen the angles on these hills.
Yes.
You won't be able to get a ladder truck there.
No, not at
And
all.
you won't be able to get a ladder. If you said that some of the Army personnel stumbled on the ladder they had, now imagine.
And that was just a basic Home Depot ladder
yeah.
that they carried up there.
Yeah, but
hung
still,
and-
they were just barely stranding the wire. The wire's there now, so you have to go through every wire. So the only way for them to probably rescue somebody is they're going to have probably sit there and figure out in the dark or whenever time it happens to cut that whole section of wire to be able to free that person. Okay. At that time, are we going to have problems with Border Patrol because we're cutting the wire to free somebody? And one thing I'm going to tell you, if that does happen, you know who's going to call us to
Who?
rescue?
Who will call you?
Border Patrol.
Oh.
Okay? Border Patrol will call us to rescue, and that's the way it's been. It's always been. Our personnel, our first responders respond to broken limbs, and they've even responded to pregnancies in areas, a little further out, close to the city limits where, they didn't have to jump a fence. It's open. They responded to pregnancies at the port. We respond to all those calls. We have the emergency services here, and that's my concern. So if that happens, imagine.
All right, so moving on from there. That's what made the vote unanimous. That's part of what
Yes.
made the vote unanimous between you and the 6 city council members. And, I remember being in that room. The tensions were high. There was press everywhere, cameras on everything. What has happened since that vote was made?
Okay. Since that vote, it's passed. Now we can use that resolution in our favor. And I started calling people, cities, the councils of government, different organizations, and then also we started sending letters. We sent letters to the governor, to Congressman Grijalva, to the 2 senators. We sent some to state representatives, and I plan to send one to the President of the United States. Everything, but I needed to have that, when I presented the resolution, I needed that resolution to pass before I could start with anything, because the resolution is the starting point of it.
And have you received any response yet?
Yes, I received a response from Congressman Grijalva's office. He prepared a letter and sent it to the Secretary of Homeland Security and some people in Washington. He's in all support of us, and he says he supports the resolution 100%.
Okay.
And I also got a call from one of the council, from the City Council of Tucson, that once, as soon as she receives the resolution, she's going to be preparing one to submit through the City Council of Tucson and see that if they can favor support for the City of Nogales.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yes.
Now, in the same day that this resolution passed, the governor of New Mexico made, basically demanded that all the National Guard be removed from his border communities.
From her border.
From her border. I'm
Yes,
sorry, from her border communities. Is that an option? Obviously, it's not something that you can do, but did you feel is that something that can happen in Arizona?
It could happen in Arizona, but I looked into that, and I think the military personnel that were in New Mexico were guardsmen. I think these are Army.
These are Army.
These are Army, and I don't think they're guardsmen from the state of Arizona.
Okay.
Because the governor does have control over the National Guard in their state. So I'm not sure if that could happen here.
All right. So also since the resolution that has been made and voted on unanimously, the news coverage for Nogales has exploded. We mentioned this earlier, that it's all over Fox News, CNN, the Huffington Post. Everybody has been talking about this. Do you feel that that's positive press for Nogales?
Yes,
Okay.
because of what's happening.
Okay.
If anything, and we can get something through this, we'll let everybody in the United States know what's happening in Nogales and the methods that they're using to protect our borders. And I've said it not once, but 10, 15 times, Joe. We here in Nogales are not against border security. We don't have anything to do, and we don't mind the wall issue that they have here in Nogales. We've had it for 20 years. Before President Trump was elected, several presidents went through it. We went through changes to get the wall that we had here. We went from a barbed wire fence to a 8-foot chain link fence to the metal landing strips from the Vietnam era that were about 12 feet high to the wall that we have right now. So even if the president was to get the billions of dollars that he's asking, they're not going to spend them, Joe, in Nogales. We have a wall. So it's a concertina wire that we're concerned with. It's not the wall issue.
Now that actually brings me to my next question, which is we mentioned that the press, the large national press that's been getting. Talking to your assistant, I understand you guys have been getting a lot of phone calls.
Yes.
From people all over the country. And
Both
not all
negative and positive.
Yeah,
Okay.
not all of them positive.
Yes.
And she mentioned that some of these people don't understand that this isn't about the wall.
Yes.
That this is about the wire that's been placed on our
Yes.
fence. You just basically explained
and
that right
and
now.
that's what we have to clear up, because it's easy to say, well, Nogales doesn't want a wall. They don't care about border security. And we understand border security. This is Nogales. Don't tell us about border security if you live in Boise, Idaho. We know border security. We know how crucial it is, how important it is, and that's the way it should be. It's just the method that they're using right now that is lethal and it's not right, and it's hideous. It's something that we don't want to see, and I'm sure anybody that visits Nogales to go into Nogales, Sonora as a tourist doesn't want to see either. Because it's if you were to walk to an area that you want to go across and you find a 16-foot wall with razor wire all the way from the top to the bottom, are you going to cross that border and try to come back later on? Because you don't know what's on the other side. Because that's what it's telling you. I don't even know what's on the other side if I've never been here. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for our neighbors and our trading partners, Mexico, that we had the trading opportunities that we have with Mexico and we've had for many, many years.
Now we're going to wrap this up really quick, but there's one more thing there's a couple more things that I want to touch on. Also, another thing that's happened is tensions in the city, within the state, have been high since before this resolution was passed, since the first strand of concertina wire went up. But that tension has been increasing. Last night, I found out actually during the taping of my show last night when I had Sheriff Estrada on with me, there was a shooting. Yes. At the port. I know that you're not a representative of Customs and Border Protection, but do you have any information on what happened?
Well, the only information we have is basically what almost everybody knows. Last night I was informed, and like we do, they inform us, our staff, of things that happen in the city, and it looks like a vehicle was going south, and they usually have random stops for southbound vehicles. Then there's only two reasons they do that is if you have over $10,000 on your person or you have weapons. And we do that so that we can protect Mexico and make sure that nothing like that illegally goes into Mexico. And it happens that something happened. We actually don't know all the facts, that there was a shooting there and the vehicle ended up in Mexico. And that's the reason everything's kind of faded a little bit, is because the minute the vehicle went into the Mexican side and the Nogales Sonora side, our department loses that opportunity to see what's happening, because we can't get close to it because it's a federal issue and it's an open investigation right now by CBP and the federal government. So and then the victim, and actually there was two people in the vehicle, they were apprehended and they were, I think, taken to the hospital in Nogales, Sonora. So at this point, we kind of lost that opportunity, but that's as much as we know right now, and we're just gonna have to wait until CBP gives us more information.
Without any speculation or excessive speculation, and without, I mean, no, you can't say that for sure, of course, that this was a result of tension, of the rising tension. But do you feel like the potential for violence is increased because of the tension?
No, I'm hoping that it's not. I'm hoping it's not, because Nogales is a very safe community, and I've said it before. Per capita, we have more law enforcement officers than anywhere else in the state of Arizona, just because of all the agencies that work here in the city, from the Sheriff's Department to DPS to municipality to federal government. And we're very glad of that, us here in the city, that we have that much protection for the city. That's why it's such a safe community. I don't think what happened yesterday is because of tension. I think it was something that just happened. And we don't know the facts on that, but I don't think that's going to continue happening, because I can't even remember the last time something like that happened. It wasn't a shooting, but we've had incidents that vehicles do want to go back because they committed some type of crime and decide, and they're trying to get into Mexico, evading the police. But I don't think it has nothing to do with attention. Let's hope that doesn't happen, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We definitely hope that there's no
Yeah.
increase in violence, especially since, I mean, as a resident of Nogales for my entire life, I know how safe this community is.
Yes.
The future. What is the plans to continue to push this forward? I mean, we mentioned you mailing the letters, and I understand from the resolution that it can go as far as a lawsuit against the federal government.
That's our last resort, but we're going to take it as far as we can and see what kind of response we get with the councils of government north of here, and also with the senators and state representatives, and see what kind of opportunities we get in Washington, and let's see. One thing before I forget, Joe, we have a city ordinance in the city of Nogales that says that you cannot install razor wire or any lethal wire unless it's in an industrial park, and it's got to be a fence higher than 6 feet, and it's got to be a storage area. You can't do it in residential houses. You can't do it nowhere else except like that.
No.
Not to the ground level.
Have you read the response from Homeland Security?
No, I
they
haven't.
sent?
But you know,
Let me actually read you regarding that specific thing. Their claim is that it's on federal government property, so that it doesn't apply.
no. They're wrong. Okay, it might be in federal government property, but the 6-foot level does apply, because they still have access to it at the ground level. Any child, any pet, anybody can easily go by it, fall at night or whatever, and get hurt. Yes, it does apply.
Okay, do you want me to read the resolution really quick? Just so
Yes.
Okay. It's a little bit long. So, after receiving a request for assistance from the Secretary of Homeland Security in 2018, the Secretary of Defense provided mission-enhancing capabilities to Department of Homeland Security and U.S. Customs and Border Protection along the southwest border. The DoD has provided defense support of civil authorities with planning assistance, engineering support through temporary barriers, barricades, and fencing, as well as fixed and rotary wing aviation support. Although the current DoD, its Department of Defense, deployment in Tucson sector is to assist CBP with the installation of 2 strands of concertina wire began in early November, there was a subsequent request for additional support in high-risk urban areas commonly exploited by criminal smuggling organizations. In these areas, referred to as concentrated areas, 4 to 6 additional strands of concertina wire are currently being installed. These locations are outside the City of Nogales charter and on United States government property. That's the part where they mentioned that. There's a little bit more.
But it says outside this Nogales City charter.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah, okay.
As the situation along the border is always evolving, CBP is constantly evaluating operational needs. Currently, there are no plans to remove the concertina wire, which is, as they'd already told you, correct? In November, CBP and United States Border Patrol, November is obviously when they strung the first ones, leadership met with local law enforcement leaders from Santa Cruz County to include law enforcement and first responders from Nogales to discuss this operation and the hardening of both the ports of entry and infrastructure between the ports of entry. Earlier today, that's the day of the vote, USBP leadership met with elected officials and law enforcement from the City of Nogales to listen to concerns and explain the current concertina wire deployment and the requirements leading up to this action.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you feel like your concerns were listened to?
No.
No? I mean, from what you've said, from what you said at the meeting, and from what you said here.
Basically, when we went to talk to them, they just out of courtesy let us talk to them, but they in no time at all were listening or even had any intention to do anything, because that's the feeling we got from them, that was their stand, and that's what it was going to be.
All right, so the last section says, CBP and local law enforcement have shared a mission of public safety. Safety for the public and first responders is of the utmost concern, and as such, several precautionary measures have been put in place. Public safety fencing has been established. That's the railing that you mentioned, right? Has been established in locations where there is major public access and the concertina wire is lower to the ground. Signage in Spanish and English has been put in place warning individuals of these dangers and prohibiting access. In locations where there is high pedestrian activity, the concertina wire is limited to only the upper portion of the wall. Now, I haven't seen the whole part of the wall, but from what I understand, that's not necessarily true.
Yeah.
Okay. CBP is firmly committed to our overall national security mission, which includes ensuring the safety and security of the traveling public, both documented and undocumented, as well as our law enforcement officers and border communities. Hardening of current infrastructure, specifically in high-risk locations of the urban area, help reduce the illicit activity to include violent criminals in these areas and increase the public safety. So what it sounds like to me is what they're expecting it to be more of a deterrent.
Yes.
From that last section, rather than something that's actually they expect to be used to actually harm people. Now, from what I understand, the city's
but
concern.
it only takes one, Joe.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
It only takes one.
The city's concern is it's not necessarily concerned about somebody following through as they are. They are concerned about that, but also just somebody getting hurt.
It only takes one person to get hurt.
And speaking of that, and this is only a rumor from what I understand, but I heard a rumor that a little boy was cut on the wire. I haven't seen anything to confirm that yet. Have you heard this rumor yet?
No, I haven't.
No, and it's possible that it's just a rumor. I haven't seen anything that confirms it. The newspaper hasn't reported on it yet.
They talk about hardening the border. They talk about everything. How about the 80 tunnels they have under the fence and the wall? Okay.
Yep. And
see,
that's something
they have to look at everything. Harden that. Harden those tunnels. They have them in Douglas. They have them in San Luis. They have them in Yuma. They have them here. Some of these tunnels are, unbelievable. The one in Douglas had a lift, had a hydraulic system, had everything.
Wow.
Okay? And there was no concertina wire. They weren't jumping over the wall.
They went under.
See? This is just a visual. To me, They're trying to show
Making a statement.
making a statement, and they're using Nogales as the poster Concertina child.
Why?
I don't know. You tell me. I wish I knew.
I wish I
but
knew.
they are doing that because there's no other place that's being done like that, especially in the downtown business area of a community and in the backyards of people.
We've actually got some more comments that. So somebody actually, this is another person who's feels that Nogales has gone downhill as far as, you know, apparently places to hang out. He says there is nowhere to hang out, and it all went downhill since they removed us hanging out at City Hall. Now I remember as a kid, City Hall was the kind of the hangout place. But from what I feel like he's claiming is that there's just nothing to do, which doesn't really feel like it has anything to do with the subject at hand. But do you feel like the concertina
Well, actually,
wires
they weren't hanging out at City Hall. They were hanging across the street from City Hall.
at the warehouse?
At the warehouse across the street.
Okay.
And I don't see any problem with the kids hanging out over there. You know, it's private property. It doesn't belong to the city.
Yeah.
But I myself, I don't see any problem. You know, that'd be a matter of fact, that'd be a cool place for the kids to hang out.
No,
you know?
are there places for people to hang out in the city? And I mean,
we
this
don't-
is off subject from the concertina wire, of course.
No, I understand, but there are very few places, you know. In the past, we had a lot of clubs, you know, but times have changed, you know. 70s, there was a time there was dancing at clubs and everything in Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora, and then the 80s come around. There was some of that. The 90s brought a different culture. You know, cultures change, you know.
Absolutely.
And since we're only like 45 minutes away from Tucson, well, that's what kids do. You know, the younger crowd, they go to Tucson, and there's a lot of places to go in Tucson.
Of course.
Before there was a lot of places to go in Nogales, Sonora too, but that's also
I remember.
Yeah.
I used to
But there's
go around there and party
a
all
lot
the
of
time.
people don't want to go over there because they're also they fear, you know, we get alerts from the State Department saying that be careful when you go to this place in Mexico, advising the U.S. citizens. So that puts a little warning out there. And yes, you have to listen to the State Department because, you know, they're trying for you to not go to places where you could get harmed or something could happen to you. But the way I say, if you stay within the lighted areas in Nogales, Sonora, and going over Obregón and stuff, there shouldn't be any problems. It all depends where you walk and you go off beat, you know. But I wish we would have more places, you know, that the younger crowd could hang out. But I myself, I don't see any problem with hanging across the street from City Hall.
Now we're gonna answer these last two comments, and then we're gonna close. And one says he's questioning the priorities of the city of Nogales, and he used some inappropriate language that I'm about to repeat. Apologize to anybody who's watching who's sensitive to language. He says this is the concerns of the city of Nogales. The city of Nogales is worried about when the city looks like shit.
Okay.
And then the next one is it's right along the lines of these same comments these people made. Said that you're just playing politics, that you have no concern for Nogales, as in the past several years there hasn't been much pedestrian traffic anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm not playing politics, okay? First of all, because if I wouldn't be saying anything about the concertina wire, if I wouldn't say anything, just let it build up, you think it's going to be politics? You know, I can't even spend a minute of my time here in the office nor my assistant without us getting calls, you know, one after the other. And the majority of them, Mayor, help us with this. What is happening to our town? You know, we need to do this. We need to do that. If I wouldn't be doing anything, I don't know what would be happening. So I think the best thing for the city of Nogales to do and the city council to do and the administration is to address this issue. If we're successful, more power to us. And if we're not, let's see what happens with time.
Now,
time will only tell.
Now he said that the city looks like shit are his exact words.
Well, it all depends what you look at.
Yeah. No, well, as far as the roads are concerned, infrastructure within the city, concertina aside, do you have plans to?
Oh yeah, we have a lot of plans. We have a strategic plan that as a matter of fact, we're going to have a meeting on the 28th in reference to that, and to improve a lot of our parks. to invest a lot of money in it. We're going after grants right now, and we're going after a lot of infrastructure. We're going to start paving within the next 2 weeks. I'm not going to say anything about the past 4 years, but in my 4 years, there's going to be a lot of things, and you're going to see that. And I just hope that we can attract that industry that I'm trying to bring to Nogales so we can have better paying jobs. And a visual of concertina wire is not a very good visual for a company that wants to relocate or comes to locate in Nogales.
Now, this last question, I'm going to address this one because it's something that we discussed earlier, and apparently this person didn't understand what we were explaining, where she says that that you're playing politics because the past several years there hasn't been very much pedestrian traffic anyway. Now, we discussed the revitalization of downtown,
yes,
and it's true that pedestrian traffic has decreased, but the efforts to revitalize that and increase pedestrian traffic, as we discussed, has been going on for years.
Yes.
Since before this concertina wire ever
Yes.
came. But the concertina wire itself, as has been expressed, basically destroys those efforts.
Well, it's going to be another obstacle that we're going to have in front of us.
Okay.
Yes, because we're trying to, and I've already talked to members of the council and the city manager. I'm going to be proposing that we go after some incentives for the business people downtown and for future business, and also some type of waiver program that we can assist them so that they can remain open. And not only that, but the buildings that are empty right now downtown for the revitalization program, so that somebody wants to rent them, we can help them out. And that's a city needs to do that to help to build a community and to build a business-friendly community. But to get obstacles placed in front of you every time you blink an eye, and not from our own residents or from other business leaders from outside of the city, but from the federal government that's supposed to be helping us and being good stewards of this community, it's not right.
So for these people who have these questions, who are apparently asking things that are already being put in place, is there somewhere for them to be informed on the things that are happening in the city to improve it?
Yes.
Now, the next question is if these places are available for them, what's keeping them from finding out this information?
Well, as soon as we get started on this, and it's going to be pretty soon. You have to remember, I've been in office 1 month.
Yeah.
Okay, as soon as we get started with this program, there's going to be opportunities for them to join groups that we have for planning purposes, and especially for not only the revitalization, for replanting of trees, for beautification of our city, and for cleanup crews. I would love to have volunteers do that, but not only to have volunteers, but to create groups that maybe even turn them into paying groups down the road to help with bringing business to Nogales and going out there as promoters of this community. So this is everything that we're going to be doing, and they can see it if they want to see it. Just come to the city council meetings. We're going to be preparing certain agendas in the council meeting that are going to reflect on this, and like next week we're going to be on the 20th. I'm putting on the agenda on a special meeting for the Children's Museum. We want to do these things for Nogales. So we're hoping, and as a council, we're hoping that we can help and we can do the best we can for our community. But we do need the help of the community. And like I said one time, and you were there, Joe, I said the people are the governing body and we're just the messengers. Mm-hmm. And so we're here to do what you want us to do. And if you help, we can be very successful in the community. It can be a beautiful community and a welcoming community for everybody to come to bring their business to Nogales.
Now, the last thing now going back to infrastructure and tying it into the concertina wire, I was told just not very long ago that the water department was trying to do some work near the border, some necessary work for the infrastructure of Nogales, correct?
Yes.
And the concertina wire prevented them from doing their job.
Yes, they put it over the meters, our city meters.
Wow. Okay.
So now our personnel are having a hard time getting to the water meters.
So the CBP, Homeland Security, they claimed that the wire was not placed within city charter.
Yeah.
But those meters
Yeah.
are being blocked
Yeah.
by
The
by that
concertina
same wire.
Yes.
So do you have a response to CBP? I mean, for Homeland Security for that?
We're going to have to work on that, and I was that was brought to my attention, and I've already talked to staff about that. We're going to see what we can do.
I'm trying to be
Because
very journalistic here.
The worst thing is for me to send a crew from the water department with some bolt cutters and start cutting the wire there so they can get access to those water meters, and then have them have problems with CBP because they're cutting the wire.
So I'm trying to be very journalistic here, but the facts seem to be right in front of my face that Homeland Security. I don't want to say that they don't know what they're doing, but perhaps they acted without actually properly researching what they were doing.
There's this buffer zone from a treaty from way back when, okay? And the buffer zone indicates 60 feet of a buffer zone. Okay. And that's why we removed the parking meters from the fence side of International by the Via de Paris downtown.
Okay.
Because so that they could park their vehicles there, and we took our parking meters from there because they came up and they said, this land belongs to us. Okay. All right. So if that was the case, and we come up and we decide tomorrow, the day after, okay, we're going to put concrete barricades right here along this buffer zone like this, then what happens? They can't get access to the wall. They can't get access for their vehicles, emergency vehicles going to certain places. A lot of things can happen. Do we want to do that? No, we don't. But they also have to work with us. So we'll follow the rules of that 60-foot buffer zone. We'll follow the rules.
Of course.
But don't tell me that within 10 feet of the wall or 12 feet of the wall, there isn't a backyard. I can take you to them. They're on East Street, they're on Escalada, and they're on Short Street.
No, one thing that I want to do actually is
we're looking at.
If anybody watching has pictures of that section of the fence, feel free to post them in the comments so that people can see them, so that they are visible to people who are watching. Mayor, we do need to wrap up. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we something short?
I just want to thank you. I want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
The show you have, We Love Nogales, and actually the other two shows you guys have are good shows, are good messengers for our community. You bring up some great topics and opportunities for us to, not only the citizens, but for us at City Hall, that to get in touch with the community and the residents of Nogales, and I'm very happy with that, Joe, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I want to thank our viewers who participated. Thank you for your participation. That's part of what we do. We want our viewers to be interactive. We want all opinions to be expressed. We want everybody to have a chance to say what they feel, and for the facts to be revealed. We want to inform more than anything. We want to inform about our community. If you want to continue following the story or track some of the other work that I've done on this story, most of it isn't done through We Love Nogales. It's done through another party, Latino Rebels, that has no affiliation with We Love Nogales, but I've written some articles for them on this same subject. You can go to latinorebels.com and track that there. That's where the audio for the from the city council meeting, the story that you told about your interactions with CBP and Border Patrol is... We're going to close comments and we're going to wrap it up. But again, thank you all for watching. Thank you. You can watch any other videos that we've had. You can, especially a good one to catch would be my interview with Sheriff Tony Estrada yesterday, where we discussed this same subject from a law enforcement perspective. And then you can catch us again next week on Wednesday. We Love Nogales with Santos Yescas, and then on my show In Línea with Joe Wright on Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure talking to you as always.
Joe. Thank you.
And we'll see you guys later. Bye.